So a couple of days ago on the channel, I made a video talking about a Nintendo Switch 2 related patent. Now, with the Switch 2, there's been lots of discussion around upscaling of images, such as things like DLSS, and we've talked about it quite a bit, basically taking a lower resolution image, a lower frame rate image, and then artificially upscaling it with artificial intelligence to a higher resolution. It's stuff that's been available on PC for quite a while now. The PS5 Pro is starting to implement it too. I really do think it is a gateway to better visuals on weaker hardware, and we've already seen the results speak for themselves, especially on things like lower end PCs. Now, this patent was interesting for a myriad of reasons, but one of the things that stood out to me was the description of the image being used to be upscaled as a 540p image. Now, a 540p image is sub 720p, which used to be like the baseline for HD. So we're talking about a less than HD related image being upscaled into this. Now, bigger Switch 2 games might utilize something like that to potentially save room or cartridge space, especially if the upscaling is very well done. But my mentality kind of went into a different place because there is currently a system on the marketplace called the Nintendo Switch that has games that go to 540p or sometimes even lower. So when I saw that, I kind of went into a mindset of, I think this might be more so related to Switch 1 games being upscaled for the Switch 2. Now, that has been a big point of contingency with a lot of people. How is Nintendo going to handle Switch 1 games on the Switch 2? We do know that the Switch 2 is going to be mostly backwards compatible with Switch 1 games. I'm sure just weird outlier things like Labo and stuff like that are the games that are not going to be able to be played on there. But would there be any sort of visual upgrade for these games? I don't think it's a make or break sort of situation. I think if the games just look and play exactly how they do on the Nintendo Switch 1, it's not really that big of a deal because you'll want to play the Switch 2 games that are dedicated for the system, but it is something at least worth talking about. And when you look at how video games are right now with the console manufacturers, there's definitely like two trains of thought with how to handle upgrades for things, and I think it really opens the door to three different types of upgrades. The first type of upgrade is there is no upgrade, and that could be very well something that Nintendo does. The second path is, of course, the PlayStation path. Now, PlayStation does update PS4 games for the PS5 with free patches and things of that nature, but they also do like definitive editions where you can upgrade for $10 and get like a new graphics engine or something like that, kind of letting people pick and choose what they want to do. And of course, by reissuing these PS4 games as PS5 games, you do get more SKUs in the NPD sales, and you do get the chance of more storefront space if you are talking about brick and mortar retailers. And then you have the Xbox method, which is just games get upgraded. Here's some voodoo where all these games now are you up to 4K, 60 frames, 120 frames, really breathing life into these old games. So really a lot of people were wondering, how is Nintendo going to handle this if they're going to do anything at all? And I know I just said a lot of stuff there, but it's necessary. You kind of have to set the groundwork and the level of expectations, because there has been things here and there that kind of are leading people to believe that Nintendo is going to do some sort of upgrade system. We, of course, have talked about things like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild allegedly running at 4K 60 frames at GDC a couple of years ago. And that's very interesting. Would that be something like a definitive edition that gets a full re-release with the DLC included at $70? Or would this be just a free upgrade? Like, it's very hard to say with Nintendo, because they are a business, and I get it, they want to make money, but sometimes the business aspect is definitely a bit on the scummy side. I'm looking at you, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, a limited run of this game, removing it from the digital storefront, and now if you want to purchase this game, you have to spend well over $100 at your local GameStop or something like that, because you can't buy the game digitally. So if you didn't own a Switch during that time frame, you can go to hell. But why am I talking about all of this? What has happened that kind of is leading people to believe that something is happening with this? Well, basically, there was a very large discovery made about Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now, Xenoblade Chronicles X, I believe, comes out today or tomorrow. I don't know. I have to pick it up because this is like, I think it's the best overall Xenoblade game just because it's very different than the other ones. I like futuristic settings instead of settings in the past and stuff like that. But Masa Grator, I don't know how to say it, but they are from the Nintendo Switch scene, translating and modding games, made a very interesting discovery. About Xenoblade Chronicles X, dynamic resolutions range from 504p to 720p in handheld, 760p to 1080p in docked mode. Game's executable has a hidden 60 frames per second mode. It seems to be implemented only partially, since enabling it causes weird issues, as proof from function that sets UI speed 1.0.1. So there is essentially a 60 frame per second mode in Xenoblade Chronicles X that just released for the Nintendo Switch. If you go to utilize it, if you go to use it when you're playing a game or the game on a Nintendo Switch system, it messes things up. Things don't go very well. So you could look at this from one of two perspectives. You could look at this from the perspective of, oh, well, they were just tinkering with a 60 frame per second mode. You know, they were messing around with it and it didn't work out and they just left it in there for some reason, which, I mean, that is a possibility. Or you could look at it from the perspective of, hey, maybe they're doing something with this for an upgrade path for the Nintendo Switch 2 to where it'll run at 60 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch 2 instead of the Nintendo Switch 1. Once again, let's talk about those dynamic resolution ranges. 504p to 720p in handheld. 504p is less than 540p. So if we're talking about taking that image and then upscaling it to beyond 504p up to potentially 1080p when you're in handheld mode, as that is the max resolution of the screen as far as we are to believe as of right now, which, I mean, makes complete sense. Like, you don't really need a 4K handheld screen right now. I don't think the benefits are worth it when it comes to things like battery life. But if you're utilizing your upscaling technology that you have for games that are sub 720p, making this image go up to 1080p and then implementing 60 frames per second, like, that really sort of changes the game, like, quite a bit. It changes the experience, it changes the way the game plays, and it changes the way the game feels. And that's not to say that Xenoblade Chronicles X right now on the Nintendo Switch is like a bad version of the game or anything, because it's honestly the superior version. It is better than the Wii U. The Wii U was almost catching on fire trying to create this game and, you know, have things with this game. There was tons of slowdown in the Wii U version. You had to download additional texture packs if you wanted like fancier textures and stuff like that, things that took up your whole hard drive on the Wii U. So this is the better version of the game to play. It is more optimized, but it seems like there is a level of optimization that can be done further that we just can't experience right now on the standard Nintendo Switch. Now, this all could just be a coincidence. This all just could be happenstance. This all just could be, oh, well, you know, we were messing around with a 60 frame per second mode and it's actually in the game, but it doesn't really run all that well. So instead of taking it out of the game, we just left it in there for people to find it. And that could be the situation. That very well could be the logical explanation with this. Or there could be something more to this. This could be a definitive sign that Switch games are going to get a boost on the Nintendo Switch 2. And I think that would make a lot of people happy. You know, leading up to this, I'm definitely of the mindset that the games are just going to play exactly how they play on the standard Nintendo Switch on the Switch 2. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's not the case. And if it's not, like, I think that just makes the system that much better. Like, honestly, like if you're doing, like, some of these games are very visually appealing in terms of art style and stuff like that, but things like frame rate really hold the game back. I would probably play through Age of Calamity and actually beat it this time, because holy hell, that frame rate sucked ass. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of this in the comments section down below. Do you think this is all just circumstantial information? Do y'all just think that it's a coincidence? Because it could be. Or do you think that there is something more to this? And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well so you're not missing any videos. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.